Lately, I've been semi-obsessed with filtering down the BGG ranking and looking for oddities. And on one of those filters, I just simply looked at 2020 and didn't filter anything else out and just sorted by highest average ranking. And to my surprise, I found something really weird. The vast majority of the top 10 were actually expansions. So thinking this might be a little bit of an anomaly, I just looked at last year, 2023. And to my surprise, 61 out of the top 100 entries, we'll call it, since it's not just core games, were expansions, and 7 of the top 10 were expansions. And so far this year, 23 of the top 100 entries on BGG are expansions. So I started digging just a little bit deeper, and I found that since 2010, expansions have been on the rise. In 2010, for expansions that have had at least 100 ratings, there were 594. Using the same criteria, expansions peaked in 2020 at 2,537. And just last year, there were 1,936. That's an insane amount of expansions. Granted, board games in general have been increasing, so, expansions should increase as well, but that's just a ton of expansions. Now, when you get to the nitty gritty, in that expansion filter, there's a lot of kind of promos and different little things, but the relationship holds true of 2010. There were many fewer expansions, and now there's a significant glut of expansions. So I wanted to poll you, the audience, and just to see, does this hold true? Do you love expansions? However, I had a thesis that they suck. So of course I wanted to lead the witness and prove my point and get a nice juicy poll of all of you saying expansions suck. That didn't happen. As of the time of recording this video, there have been 109 votes on the poll. The poll simply says, do expansions suck? And 81% of you said no. So I have a decision. I either bow to the wishes of you all and not make any waves, or I proceed directly into the storm, knowing I am going to provoke some of you and continue with my original thesis that expansions suck. And in that spirit, I give you the top 10 reasons why expansions suck. First and foremost, different rulebooks suck. I hate when an expansion comes out, gives me a rule book, and tells me to go, in the middle of it, tells me to go reference the core rule book. Certainly there are some expansions out there that give you a new base rule book, but I think they're fewer and far between. I believe Everdell was one of them in the complete collection, but no others off the top of my head. I just really don't like that a publisher is not going to take the extra steps to incorporate the new rulebook all together, all in one, as if this expansion is made for the core game. Reason number 2 that I think expansions suck is I hate going back to a core game that has multiple expansions, trying to first of all remember how the game plays, but then secondly, how all these other expansions work together. It feels like such a chore to get going again. It honestly stops me from playing them. One example is Dune. Rise of Ix and Immortality are, by all accounts, wonderful expansions. I just don't get the game to the table enough to really understand how they work together without taking an hour or so reading both rule books, by the way, and trying to figure out how to incorporate everything. Reason number 3 is having to alter the core game in order to get it to the table. I don't mind if things just slide in, I'm shuffling extra cards in, whatever it might be. I don't like when I have to replace cards and sort through stuff and really alter the full setup. It's just a burden. I don't like it. It nests with that last reason, or it's just another impediment to getting it to the table. It feels, in some cases, overwhelming. Reason number 4 is when it doesn't fit all in the base box. I hate having multiple boxes. In fact, I think right behind us right here, ISS Vanguard, ISS Vanguard, ISS Vanguard. I think there's another little box behind it for ISS Vanguard. Granted, to get all of that stuff in one box, that'd be a one big ass box, but still, it still just makes me feel bad having multiple boxes on the shelves. Now, in this instance, they kind of go together, but in some instances, like, maybe right here, Marine Worlds, which I haven't played yet, by the way. It's sitting on my shelf and I have yet to actually get it out. It's a different size box. Now, it does technically fit in the base box, so that kind of invalidates. However, I have an insert that's been printed for it, and now I can't fit it in that box with said insert. I've got to make a whole new insert, which is technically another reason, but that's not a very common reason, so that's not on the list. Reason number 5, when there is no big box solution. I love big boxes and I hate them at the same time. I mean, they kind of plague my space. However, I just like things all neat and tidy in a big box. Reason number 6, when I have to buy a big box separate. That's right. We're still on the big box subject here. I really hate when it's broken down on a campaign and it says add the big box solution, and I'm paying like 20 or 30 bucks for a cardboard box. Roll it in, do that psychological trick. Don't make me buy it separate. Just put it all together. And with all of that said, here are the top 3 games that I fully regret buying the big box for. First and foremost, Summit. I had no idea what Summit was. I just thought it looked cool and I bought it. And then I somehow found myself buying the all-in with the mats and the big box solution because I like big box solutions. Number 2, Endless Winter. I really enjoyed my time with Endless Winter in the very beginning. I was fully hyped up by all of the FOMO Kickstarter hype on YouTube, so I went all in and bought it, and now I just fully regret it. I just don't get it to the table. I'd probably have just as much fun in the basic core box, and I probably would get it to the table a little more often. And number 3, biggest regret, is Everdell Complete Collection. While I thought it was actually a pretty decent value if you play all of the 100 expansions, the problem with the expansions, they're all modular. They're not made to work together. It's just overwhelming when you open up the box. Yeah, I think I've actually played Everdell less because I got the Complete Collection. The one I don't regret whatsoever is the big box of Voidfall. It's totally overproduced and absolutely beautiful and wonderful for one of my absolute favorite games. All right, enough with big boxes. Back to the list. Reason number 7, it sucks when a publisher says they're not going to produce a big box because 37 spirits aren't enough and there's going to be more spirits coming and they want to see just how much cardboard they can shove down our throats before they're going to give me a big box. Okay, now I'm done with big boxes, I promise. Reason number 8, I hate when a game has gotten so big and so modular that it's hard to figure out what to play with. And speaking of big boxes, I know I was done with it, but this behemoth, this chest back here of Too Many Bones is the prime example of this. When I think about playing Too Many Bones, there's countless gear locks, there's countless tyrants, there's countless baddies, there's countless scenarios, countless expansions, an insane amount of content. And honestly, I probably get it to the table less because I'm overwhelmed about all of the choices I have to actually go and play the game. I probably would be better off with just one of the core boxes and moved on with my life. But I really do like the game. Reason number 9, this is my wife's contribution this morning as I was talking to her about this subject. She says she hates learning. For some of you out there, you just want to get your hooks into a game, understand it, and just play it over and over again. My wife is one of them. In fact, right now she is on quite the BGA Azul kick and has played hundreds of games since I introduced her to BGA, which I wish I haven't now because now she doesn't want to play things like brass. Either way, I like learning, but it is a bit of a chore just learning new stuff to bolt on to that old game that you might have actually liked already. And if you didn't like and you're having to buy an expansion in order to make it good, what does that say about it? And the number 10/1, and now I'm saying this, I'm realizing I should have been counting down, but you know what I mean. This is number 10/1, the biggest reason I think expansions suck. We're going to actually start with a little bit of a story time before I give you that reason. Don't worry, it's brief. I recently was contacted to trade my 7th Citadel. It is on my trade list. I'm a little bit reluctant. I know I said in the video that I probably should go back to it. But considering that I didn't love my time with it and I wasted hours and hours and hours of my life to just lose and have to start all over again, I was listening to offers. And in some of the dialogue going back and forth with this gentleman, he said, wait, but do you have the expansions? I immediately was glad that this wasn't a face-to-face conversation because I rolled my eyes and laughed to myself thinking, bro, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. There is a 98% chance that you won't even make it to the 2nd threat, let alone any other extra content. The scope of this game is insane. The number of hours in which that you're going to spend playing this is pretty nuts. And why on earth are you concerned with getting an expansion to a game that is going to be tens of hours before you've even played the game? Granted, he could have played 7th Continent, and there could be other reasons why. Regardless, the principle holds true. Why are we buying expansions to games that we haven't even played yet, and we don't even know if we're going to like? Hence, reason number 1. I hate, and this is mostly a crowdfunding campaign subject, but I hate when a brand new game is actually launched with expansions. Forgive me, this is a little bit of a rant here, but why on earth would this wonderful game that you're producing, that you're promising I'm going to absolutely love, need an expansion? And if it was so critical, why isn't it just the game? Well, I think the answer lies in the tier structure and pricing, where that tier structure is meant as a get you in the door, and then we're going to continuously upsell you with a psychological principle called loss aversion. This principle is used against us all of the time. And since I am no expert in psychological principles, I consulted ChatGPT to give you a definition on what exactly loss aversion is. Loss aversion is a fundamental principle in behavioral economics and psychology, which suggests that people tend to strongly prefer avoiding losses over acquiring equivalent gains. The bias can influence decision-making in various aspects of life, including consumer behavior, investment choices, and even leisure activities such as gaming. That's right, many of us, I am included in this group, suffer from loss aversion, especially when it comes to these crowdfunding campaigns. We don't want to deal with the consequences of getting this brand new game, waiting a year or more for it to actually hit our doorstep, and then only finding out that that one expansion that I didn't add on was the thing that makes this absolutely great. There's a social dynamic there as well, where people are talking about how wonderful these expansions are, and oh, it would feel so bad if I don't have that expansion. I am constantly falling victim to this. I don't think there's ever been a campaign that I've backed that wasn't all in, at least content all in. There might be a couple, but for the most part, it gets me almost every single time. But there is something in the back of my head saying, I'm probably never going to get to that expansion. ISS Vanguard is a really great example. I have the expansions in shrink. After unboxing and organizing the base core game, I am really questioning whether I actually ever crack those boxes. This is a direct application of FOMO. And the only way to get these different pricing structures to bring us along on that journey is to create a bunch of expansions instead of just saying, this is the game. This is the best way that we have figured out to play this game. That's all I want to know. I want to know what is the best way to do it. I don't care if the base game comes with modules that feel bolted on because you want to add friction to your decision space. I just don't want to have to make that decision. I want you to tell me what's the best way to play it. Through all of your playtesting, what has been the most successful for enjoyment and maximum dopamine? Give me that and call it the core game, and let's call it a day. With all of that said, I do admit that expansions might just be a necessary evil. See, our gaming hobby is significantly different from the video gaming hobby. Because of course, video games can be patched, and they often are. They are often pushed out way too early and often have a significant number of bugs and defects that have to be patched over the next year. I get it. Cardboard games, while not necessarily as technically complicated, still deal with complicated math systems that might be unbalanced. That after 1,000 plays, they might not rear their head, but after 100,000 plays, those problems will start to come up in forums and be called out as flaws in the game. And in some instances, there's errata and rules that are changed, and you have to kind of alter the way you go about them. But in some cases, you need cardboard and plastic to actually alter the fundamental design of the game, and that comes by way of an expansion. And I absolutely admit there are some core expansions out there that are really known to have completely changed and now are critical to the maximum enjoyment of the game. I think of Norwegians for A Feast for Odin, Prelude for Terraforming Mars, or even Rise of Ix for Dune Imperium are expansions that are thought to have fundamentally altered the design of the game to a point that really changes it and really improves the experience for a player. However, there is something that sucks. It just sucks we have to pay for that patch. And the other thing that sucks is, in a lot of cases, these are way more expensive than video games. So then adding on expansions to that to have to patch an original problem really sucks. But might be a necessary evil. With all of that said, in order to demonstrate I'm not a heartless bastard and I love expansions just as much as you and I fall prey to them, here are the 3 best expansions of core games that I can see in my purview right this second. First and foremost, Expedition Leaders for Lost Ruins of Arnak. I did a big Lost Ruins of Arnak video. Go check that out if you're interested. But Expedition Leaders fundamentally, for me, altered the game to a point that made it significantly more enjoyable. Giving asymmetric leaders to each and every player was an absolute game changer. It helped you do more stuff. It helped you play your own game and not necessarily compete for this linear win state. By many accounts, it did the same for others. And I think for me now is just a critical expansion that I will never not play with. That's a double negative. That wasn't good. Number 2, which I know is contradictory because I already said that I don't like having to pick between all of the gear locks in Too Many Bones. I love that they exist. The asymmetric nature of each gear lock is wonderful. They bring so much to the game. They are really why I love the game, but also why sometimes it's hard to make choices and actually get it to the table. And number 3, I recently did a video on how this expansion completely changed the game for me, and it's the Marauders expansion for Root. The vast majority of my plays are 2-player Marauders, and the subsequent hirelings totally, for me at least, fix Root at the 2-player player count. If you want to know more about that, go check out my video, but just know I can see it and I love it, so it is on the list. And in order to thoroughly confuse you about my stance on expansions, be on the lookout for another video where I go over the top expansions of all time that completely alter the core game for the better. And if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. If you want to see that video and others, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, have yourself a great week.